In the previous episode, we left glass behind in the age when it was a jewel. A time when it gleamed on royal tables, when those who stole its formula were hunted by state agents, and when its secrets were guarded on an isolated Venetian island. Back then, glass was a display of power, a symbol of status. But today, when you step outside, walk into an ordinary grocery store, or simply lift your eyes toward a towering skyscraper, what you see is no longer a jewel. When glass breaks today, we don't mourn it. When a soda bottle is empty, we don't preserve it like a work of art. We toss it away without a second thought. Most of the time, we barely even notice it exists. We don't look at the glass in our hand. We look at the water inside it. We don't focus on the window pane. We focus on the view beyond it. So what happened? What happened to that mysterious material, once worth more than gold by weight, locked away in royal treasuries? How did the most expensive, most unattainable material in history become one of the cheapest, most ordinary, and most invisible substances on Earth? In this episode, we tell the story of how glass stepped down from its throne and blended into everyday life. We will watch luxury turn into standardization. But this is not merely a story of falling prices. It is the story of humanity reaching light, of cities reshaping themselves, and of technology carrying us into a transparent world. Welcome to the transformation of the luxury of being visible into the standard of being invisible. Until the Industrial Revolution, and even until very recent times, there was a massive problem humanity could not solve when it came to glass. A problem that drove master craftsmen to despair: flatness. Today, when we look out a window, we see the world clearly, like a photograph. Trees stand still, cars keep their shape. But for someone living in the 1700s or 1800s, the world did not look like this. Through windows, reality always appeared a little drunk, a little wavy. Look closely at paintings from earlier centuries, interior scenes of the time, or preserve original windows in historic buildings. You will notice a thick bulge at the center, circular patterns around it, and strange ripples across the surface. The outside world seems distorted, as if viewed from underwater. The reason was simple. Glass is a stubborn, rebellious material. When melted in fire, it wants to drip, to gather, to flow. When you tell it, be a perfectly flat sheet, lie still like paper, it resists. For centuries, craftsmen fought the laws of physics to flatten glass. One method, known as crown glass, involved spinning a massive molten glass bubble at high speed in front of a furnace. Centrifugal force spread it outward, flattening it like a plate. But no matter what they did, a thick knot remained at the center where the pipe had been attached, called the bull's eye. The wealthy took the clearer edges. The poor were left with the bulging center that warped their view of the world. Even how clearly you saw reality depended on how much money you had. Later came the cylinder method. Glass was blown into a long sausage shape, sliced lengthwise, and reheated to be flattened like fabric under an iron. But this time the surface remained rough, scattering light. For centuries, the world appeared blurry through windows. To see clearly, you had to open them. Close the window to keep out the cold, and reality stayed outside as well. Humanity could look at transparency, but could not fully see through it. But technology was not the only obstacle keeping glass out of homes. There was a harsher, stranger, and more political barrier: greed. It may sound like a dystopian film plot today, but in the 17th and 18th centuries, European governments, especially in England and France, introduced one of history's strangest taxes to fund their wars: the window tax. The logic was simple: the wealthy have large houses. Large houses have many windows. So instead of taxing income, let's tax windows. The state counted how much sunlight entered your home and charged you for it. On paper, it looked logical, even fair. In reality, it became a nightmare, a public health disaster. Poor families who could not afford the tax began bricking up their windows. Streets filled with blinded buildings. New apartments were constructed without windows at all, dark, airless boxes designed to avoid taxation. The consequences were devastating. Cities sank into darkness. In damp, unventilated rooms, disease flourished. Typhus, cholera, and tuberculosis spread rapidly. Children developed rickets due to lack of sunlight. While governments filled their treasuries, the public lost both health and vision. Light had become a luxury you could only buy. For nearly 150 years, people lived imprisoned in their own homes under a tax bitterly known as daylight robbery. This madness did not end with public outrage alone. It was science that delivered the final blow. Physicians and medical authorities presented governments with overwhelming evidence. Dark, unventilated homes were proven to be a direct cause of tuberculosis, typhus, and developmental disorders. Medical journals branded the tax a tax on health. Under mounting scientific proof and rising public anger, parliaments finally gave way. In 1851, the tax was abolished. It was like opening the floodgates of a dam. First in England, then across the world, architecture exploded. Bricks were removed, walls were torn down, windows reopened. Glass was no longer just a material. It had become a symbol of freedom. The spread of glass did not stop with windows. There was also a problem of safety. Old glass shattered into razor-sharp blades when broken. Using glass in automobiles was essentially signing a death warrant. The solution that changed history came from a simple accident. In 1903, French chemist Edouard Benedictus dropped a glass laboratory flask. It hit the floor crack. He expected it to shatter into pieces. But when he looked closer, he was stunned. The glass was cracked, fragmented, yet it hadn't fallen apart. The pieces held together, like a jigsaw puzzle. Benedictus remembered what had once been inside the flask: cellulose nitrate, a liquid, plastic-like substance. It had evaporated, leaving behind a thin, transparent film coating the glass. That invisible layer held the fragments together. In that moment, laminated safety glass was born. Today, car windshields are made using this principle. Thanks to that hidden plastic layer between two sheets of glass, crashes no longer turn windshields into deadly blades. Glass was no longer just transparent. It had become protective. Safety was solved. Taxes were gone. But the greatest challenge remained: smoothness. Factories still relied on massive rollers and grinding machines to flatten glass. The process was slow, expensive, and inefficient. The final revolution arrived in 1952, one evening, in a kitchen. Alastair Pilkington stood washing dishes, staring at the thin layer of grease floating on the surface of dirty water. The oil spread out perfectly flat. Supported by liquid beneath it, gravity and surface tension turned it into a flawless mirror. A realization struck him: there's no need to crush or grind glass flat. If we let it float on another liquid, the laws of nature will iron it for us. There was one problem. Glass melts at over 1,000 degrees Celsius. What liquid could remain molten at that temperature? Water would vaporize instantly. Oil would burn. Lead was toxic. The answer was molten tin. After years of secret experiments, Pilkington's team poured molten glass onto a bath of liquid tin in an oxygen-free atmosphere. The result was extraordinary. The glass spread across the tin like olive oil on water. The bottom was perfectly smooth because it touched liquid. The top was smooth because gravity flattened it. When it emerged from a furnace, the glass was flawless, like untouched water, brilliant as a diamond. And most importantly, cheap. This was the wheel of glassmaking. They called it float glass. Today, nearly 90% of the world's flat glass, from shop windows to car windshields, comes from that idea born while washing dishes. As glass became cheaper, larger, and smoother, it changed one of humanity's oldest habits: shelter. For thousands of years, home meant walls. Thick stone meant protection from nature. But in 1851, when the Crystal Palace was built in London, people could not believe their eyes. A massive structure 560 meters long, made of 300,000 pieces of glass. No walls, no stone, just iron and glass. Even ancient trees in the park were left standing inside the building. You were indoors, yet outside. At first, people were afraid to enter. They thought the glass would shatter in the wind, that the roof would collapse. The human mind could not accept that something transparent could also be strong. But the building stood. And architecture changed forever. Buildings were no longer held up by walls, but by steel skeletons. Glass became a skin, a curtain wall, wrapping structures in light. Look at modern cities: New York, Dubai, Istanbul. Those towers are vertical rivers of glass. Glass ceased to be a barrier from nature. It became a transparent veil connecting us to light, sky, and landscape. Returning to the very beginning, to obsidian, that volcanic black stone from our first episode, humanity traveled from darkness and sharp edges to cities wrapped in transparent skin. Today, glass has conquered our physical world. Look up, you see it on skyscrapers. Step outside, it's in front of your car. At home, on your table, in your display cabinets, it's there. Born from sand and fire, glass has become the transparent skeleton of our civilization. But the story does not end here. We think of glass as something that simply stands still, lets light through, and breaks. We treat it as cookware, construction material, decoration. Yet glass is about to change again. Its architectural era is ending. A much larger, more complex, and more intelligent role awaits it. A role where glass will not only carry light, but information. It will not just show the world, it will help shape it. The age of glass as construction is over. The age of communication and intelligence is beginning. In the next and final episode, we will explore how glass becomes the backbone of the internet, the screen in our pocket, and the technology of the future. The Invisible Hero's greatest secret, next time. See you in Glass Today, Glass Tomorrow.